chịu khó xíu nha con.
Dạ.
Ráng lên con. Cố gắng xíu nha. Trong máu bồng. Con chịu khó chút nè con. Rồi, ráng lên con. Ráng lên nha. Ráng lên con, ráng lên, có lên.
Dạ. Đau. Đau.
Mụn nhiều lắm chị ạ. Chị muốn coi lại đây coi nè. Dán lên Thanh Mai ạ. Dán lên nha Thanh Mai. Mụn nhiều lắm con ạ. Cái lạnh của lạnh. Rất là con. Mụn viêm hết trơn rồi đây. Không để lâu nữa là nó biến chứng ra con à. Con hiểu không? Thật sự. Nhanh con. Con nghỉ không con? Con nghỉ tí không?
Dạ.
Thôi cho con nghỉ tí ha.
Dạ.
Nghỉ tí.
Caroline Levitt stepped into the dimly lit courtroom, her heels clicking against the cold marble floor. The moment she set foot inside, a soft chuckle rippled through the room. Judge Wallace, an old man with deep-set eyes, smirked as he adjusted his glasses. "You're the defense attorney?" he scoffed, barely hiding his amusement. The spectators whispered, their voices like rustling leaves. Caroline felt their eyes crawling over her, dissecting, judging. The prosecutor, a towering figure in a crisp suit, shook his head, as if her presence was an insult to profession. But Caroline didn't flinch. She knew something they didn't. She knew what lurked beneath the surface of this trial. Something dark, something twisted. She tightened her grip on the case file, its contents cold against her fingers. Let them laugh. Soon, they'd regret it. Caroline sat alone in her dimly lit apartment the night before, poring over old case files, her fingers tracing the faded ink of forgotten horrors. She wasn't supposed to be here. No prestigious law school, no powerful mentors, just sheer, relentless will. She recalled the whispers in the courtroom, the way the judge's laughter coiled around her like a noose. It wasn't the first time she'd been underestimated. People always saw the frail girl who once stood trembling in the shadows of an unspeakable past. They didn't see the fire beneath. A gust of wind rattled the window. She glanced over her shoulder. Nothing. And yet, something felt wrong. A lingering presence, a memory clawing its way back. Her hands trembled slightly as she shut the file. The case was far from ordinary. It reeked of something deeper, something waiting, something watching. Caroline sat in the courtroom, the weight of the case pressing against her chest. The defendant, a hollow-eyed man named Daniel Grayson, sat motionless beside her. His face was pale, his fingers twitching slightly. The evidence against him was damning. Bloody fingerprints, a confession scrawled in his own hand, an open and shut case. But Caroline knew better. She had spent sleepless nights peeling back the layers, uncovering something unnatural. Witnesses recanted, footage vanished, and crime scene reports contradicted themselves. It was as if the truth refused to be seen. The prosecution stood, their voice dripping with certainty. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have irrefutable proof." A flicker. The courtroom lights dimmed. Just for a second, Caroline stiffened. The air shifted, thick with something unseen. She glanced at Daniel. His lips barely moved, but she swore she heard it. "They're watching." A shiver crawled down her spine. The prosecutor, Mr. Holloway, let out a dry chuckle. "Ms. Levitt, I assume you're ready for this challenge?" His voice dripped with condescension, drawing laughter from the jury. Caroline met his gaze, expression unreadable. "More than you think." Holloway turned to the jury, shaking his head. "Ladies and gentlemen, what we have here is desperation masquerading as a defense. A feeble attempt to twist reality into something convenient." He glanced at Daniel, who sat eerily still. "The evidence is overwhelming. The confession, his own. The blood, his fingerprints. And yet, Ms. Levitt would have you believe, what? That unseen forces are at play." More laughter. Caroline's fingers curled around the table's edge. They didn't see it. The unnatural stillness in Daniel, the flicker of something wrong in his eyes. She did, and soon they would too. Caroline exhaled slowly, steadying her pulse. They mocked her. Let them. She stood, her heels clicking against the polished floor. "The prosecution claims this is simple. But tell me, Mr. Holloway, why did the surveillance footage from the night of the murder mysteriously corrupt?" The courtroom quieted. Holloway smirked. "Technical failure." "Convenient," Caroline murmured. "And the forensic reports, 3 contradicting time-of-death estimates? The same officers who found Mr. Grayson's so-called confession later reported nightmares." Holloway's smirk faltered. Caroline stepped closer to the jury. "Ladies and gentlemen, something is wrong with this case. The evidence, alive one moment, altered the next. Witnesses remembering details that don't match reality. The air thickened, charged with something unseen." Daniel's breath hitched. And then a whisper, low, rasping, not from Daniel, from the shadows beneath the judge's bench. Caroline's blood turned to ice. Caroline's breath slowed. The courtroom remained oblivious, but she heard it. That whisper, writhing beneath the judge's bench like something alive. She steadied herself. "Your Honor, the prosecution relies on evidence that changes when observed too closely. Doesn't that disturb you?" Judge Wallace frowned. "Evidence doesn't change, Ms. Levitt." "Then explain this." Caroline slid a folder onto the table. "These are the original case files, before they were mysteriously altered." Holloway scoffed. "More theatrics." Caroline flipped the first page. The courtroom monitors flickered. The typed words bled, shifting, rearranging, dates misaligning, confessions distorting. Gasps rippled through the jury. Holloway paled. "That's not possible." Caroline turned to Daniel. His lips moved soundlessly. The lights dimmed again, a breath of cold sweeping through the room. And then, in the reflection of the judge's gavel, something moved. Something watching. Something smiling. The temperature in the courtroom dropped. Caroline clenched her jaw, suppressing the shiver crawling up her spine. The ink on the documents bled like an open wound, words shifting, rearranging. The jury sat frozen, eyes flicking between her and the pages, their collective breath held. Judge Wallace's fingers twitched. He cleared his throat. "Ms. Levitt, what is this?" Caroline met his gaze. The truth. A strangled sound escaped Holloway's throat. He stumbled back, eyes locked on the flickering screen. The security footage, previously corrupted, now played. The grainy image showed Daniel Grayson sitting alone in his cell. Then movement. A shadow unfurled behind him, tendrils stretching, folding into something almost human. Someone gasped. The screen glitched. The figure turned, revealing a face, twisted, smiling. Not Daniel's. The light surged, then blacked out. A single whisper slithered through the darkness. Too late. A hush swallowed the courtroom. The lights flickered back, casting uneasy shadows. Caroline's heartbeat thundered in her ears, but she didn't move. Judge Wallace's face had lost all color. The jury shifted, their confidence unraveling. The prosecution, so smug minutes ago, now looked hollow, uncertain. Caroline exhaled, voice steady. The evidence doesn't lie. Something else has been pulling the strings in this case, and you all felt it. She turned to the jury, locking eyes with each of them. You saw it. Holloway tried to object, but his voice cracked. This is absurd. Is it? Caroline slid another document forward. The confession, previously clear, was now unreadable, the ink smeared like claw marks. Daniel sat motionless, but his lips curled slightly. Who did you see in that video? Caroline pressed. No one answered, because the real horror wasn't the evidence. It was a realization. They weren't alone. Judge Wallace's hand trembled as he reached for his gavel, but he didn't strike it. His eyes darted to the flickering monitor, the distorted confession, the unease spreading like a virus through the courtroom. This isn't possible, he muttered, voice hollow. Caroline took a step forward. You laughed at me when I walked in. Your Honor, do you still think this case is simple? Silence. Even Holloway had nothing to say. Then Daniel moved. A slow, unnatural tilt of the head. His lips barely parted, but a whisper slithered through the room. He sees now. Judge Wallace flinched. The air thickened, charged with something unseen, something old. The gavel fell from his grip, clattering to the floor. Caroline didn't blink. The truth was never about proving innocence. She turned to the jury, her voice a breath above silence. It was about proving reality itself was a lie. The courtroom was deathly silent. No one moved. No one spoke. The weight of something unseen pressed down, suffocating. Judge Wallace, once so smug, now looked hollow, his fingers gripping the bench as if reality itself might slip away. The jury refused to meet Caroline's eyes. Even Holloway, the once boastful prosecutor, sat frozen, his breath shallow. Daniel Grayson slowly turned toward Caroline, his smile stretching just a little too wide. You did well, he murmured. The lights flickered. The shadows deepened. Caroline felt it before she saw it. A presence shifting, slipping just beneath perception. Then the judge finally spoke, voice brittle. Case dismissed. Caroline didn't smile. This was no victory. She gathered her papers, her pulse steady, her expression unreadable. As she stepped outside, the wind whispered through the empty streets. Something had been set free today, and it would never be caged again.